Alcatraz. A name synonymous with maximum security, isolation, and an undeniable aura of invincibility. Perched on a desolate island in the churning waters of San Francisco Bay, the Rock was designed to be the ultimate prison, a place from which escape was not merely difficult, but impossible. For nearly 3 decades, it housed some of America's most dangerous criminals, yet its legendary status wasn't forged solely by its notorious inmates, but by the very premise of its existence: total containment. This was a fortress believed impregnable, a testament to human ingenuity in confinement. Alcatraz's reputation wasn't an exaggeration, it was a carefully cultivated reality. The cold, swift currents of the bay, the watchful eyes of guards, and the robust architecture all conspired to make any attempt futile. Over its 29-year operation as a federal penitentiary, 36 men attempted to escape across 14 separate incidents. The outcome for most was grim: 2 drowned, 6 were shot and killed, and the majority were quickly apprehended. No one, it was unequivocally stated, had ever successfully escaped Alcatraz and survived. Yet, the human spirit, even when caged, often refuses to surrender hope, or the will to defy. It is against this backdrop of perceived invincibility that one of history's most audacious and enduring mysteries unfolded. 3 men, driven by a desperate desire for freedom, would challenge the very foundation of Alcatraz's legend. Their names were Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin. Their plan, if it could even be called that, was meticulously conceived, years in the making, and astonishingly simple in its execution, requiring only the most rudimentary tools and an extraordinary blend of patience and daring. Frank Lee Morris, often described as a highly intelligent individual with an IQ reportedly in the genius range, was no stranger to incarceration. His life was a revolving door of reformatories and prisons, beginning with his first conviction at age 13. Morris possessed a natural cunning and a meticulous mind, traits that made him a formidable escape artist. He had successfully escaped from previous institutions, a fact that surely marked him for transfer to Alcatraz, the prison designed to hold those who could not be held anywhere else. Here, his skills would be tested like never before. John and Clarence Anglin, brothers from a large, impoverished family in rural Georgia, were career criminals whose offenses primarily involved bank robbery. Unlike Morris, they were not known for their intellectual prowess but for their resourcefulness and determination. They had a history of attempting escapes together from other federal prisons, demonstrating a shared resolve and loyalty. Their transfer to Alcatraz was a direct consequence of their persistent efforts to break free, placing them alongside Morris, in the most secure penitentiary in the nation, yet perhaps, also the most challenging opportunity for their talents. Morris arrived at Alcatraz in January 1960, followed by John Anglin in January 1961, and Clarence Anglin a few months later in April 1961. The 3 men, all designated as high-risk escapees, were eventually housed in adjoining cells within Cell Block B, a crucial stroke of luck for their nascent plans. This proximity allowed them to communicate without arousing immediate suspicion from guards, and to begin discussing the very idea that Alcatraz officials deemed impossible: a coordinated, meticulously planned escape from the Rock, right under the noses of their captors. The sheer audacity of contemplating an escape from Alcatraz would deter most. But Morris, with his calculating mind, saw not an impenetrable barrier, but a series of interconnected vulnerabilities. The first critical observation was the deteriorating condition of the prison itself. Built in the late 19th century, the saltwater environment had taken its toll, causing the concrete and steel to corrode. This slow decay, largely unnoticed by guards focused on overt threats, presented a subtle, yet potentially exploitable weakness: a tiny crack in the fortress walls that Morris and his conspirators intended to widen. A key weakness identified by Morris was the prison's outdated ventilation system. Each cell, including theirs, had an air vent that was protected by a metal grill. Crucially, behind these grills was a narrow, unmonitored utility corridor, about 3 feet wide, running behind the entire block of cells. This corridor led to the prison roof. The grills were originally designed to be easily removable for maintenance, and the concrete surrounding them was softened by years of saltwater exposure. This was their path to freedom, a secret route hidden in plain sight. With the escape route identified, the next challenge was acquiring tools. Imprisoned and under constant surveillance, they couldn't simply request chisels and hammers. Their ingenuity blossomed under pressure. They fashioned crude implements from stolen spoons, coins, and even an old vacuum cleaner motor that could be adapted into a makeshift drill. These improvised tools, though primitive, were surprisingly effective against the softened concrete and rusty metal of their cell walls. The slow, rhythmic scraping and chipping began, masked by the ambient noise of the prison. The incessant clanging and scraping of their digging would have quickly betrayed their secret. Morris, ever the strategist, devised a brilliant method to mask the noise. The prison's music hour, when inmates were allowed to play accordions and other instruments, provided the perfect acoustic cover. The cacophony of amateur musicians echoing through the cell block effectively drowned out the quieter, but persistent, sounds of their work. This daily ritual became their window of opportunity, a period of sanctioned noise that allowed their clandestine operation to continue undetected. To buy precious hours before their absence was discovered, the escapees needed to create convincing decoys. Their solution was remarkably clever: papier-mâché heads, crafted from a mixture of soap, toilet paper, and stolen hair from the prison barbershop floor. These lifelike replicas, complete with painted skin tones and real hair, were placed in their beds, covered with blankets, to give the illusion of sleeping inmates. This would allow them to escape and gain a significant head start before the morning count revealed their daring departure. The most critical element of their escape plan was the crossing of the treacherous San Francisco Bay. They couldn't swim through the frigid, turbulent currents, so a raft was essential. Over many months, they meticulously collected over 50 stolen raincoats, which they then painstakingly glued together using heated glue from the prison workshop and improvised clamps. The result was a surprisingly sturdy, inflatable raft and makeshift life vests. This clandestine manufacturing operation, conducted within the utility corridor, required immense coordination and secrecy. As the months turned into a year of meticulous preparation, the men grew bolder, their confidence buoyed by their secret progress. Each evening, after lights out, they would remove the grills, access the utility corridor, and continue their work. The final pieces of the puzzle, the fully assembled raft, the life vests, the papier-mâché heads, were all in place. The date was set, June 11, 1962. The weather, the tides, and the guard rotation all seemed to align. This was their moment, the culmination of an impossible dream, about to become a desperate reality. On the fateful night of June 11, 1962, the three men executed their plan. Morris was the first to widen his vent opening sufficiently. He then squeezed through the narrow hole, entering the dark utility corridor. The Anglin brothers soon followed. Their first hurdle was complete, they were out of their cells. But this was merely the beginning. The next stage involved ascending the plumbing pipes within the corridor, a perilous climb to the roof of the cell block, all while maintaining absolute silence in the dead of night. Once in the utility corridor, the trio had to navigate its confined space. They climbed 30 feet of plumbing and drain pipes, emerging through an exhaust vent onto the prison roof. This was perhaps the most exposed part of their journey within the prison walls, where the guards in the watchtowers were patrolling the grounds could potentially spot them. Under the cloak of night, they moved silently across the roof, avoiding the searchlights, making their way to the northwestern side of the island, their rendezvous point with the bay. Back in their cells, the papier-mâché heads had been carefully positioned on their pillows, covered by blankets. From a distance, in the dim light of the cells, they looked convincingly like sleeping inmates. This ingenious deception was crucial, designed to delay the discovery of the escape until the morning count. For several hours, the guards would pass by, none the wiser, believing their charges were safely asleep. The time bought by these crude but effective effigies was their most valuable commodity. From the prison roof, the men shimmied down a greasy vent pipe, approximately 50 feet, to reach the ground. They then navigated the prison's perimeter, a terrain of barbed wire and steep embankments, until they reached the water's edge on the north side of the island. This was the final terrestrial obstacle, a dangerous descent in the dark, but one they had meticulously scouted and prepared for. The chilling waters of the San Francisco Bay, their ultimate challenge, now lay directly before them. At approximately 12 a.m. on June 12, 1962, the three fugitives reached the bay. Here, they swiftly inflated their homemade raft using a small, accordion-like instrument, likely a musical one, or possibly a modified pump. They launched the vessel into the frigid, turbulent waters, pushing off into the strong currents. Their destination was Angel Island, about 2 miles north, a seemingly achievable distance, but one fraught with unseen dangers and the immense power of the bay. There was, in fact, a fourth conspirator, Alan West. West had been integral to the planning, meticulously helping to carve out his own vent opening. However, on the night of the escape, his hole proved too small, and he was unable to remove his grill in time. Despite frantic efforts by the others to help him, they had to abandon him. West, trapped, watched his compatriots slip away into the night. His failure to escape would later provide crucial details to the FBI investigation, yet he always maintained the others made it out alive. The following morning, June 12, 1962, at 7:15 a.m., during the routine count, a guard noticed Morris's head was suspiciously still. A poke with his baton confirmed the horrifying truth: it was a dummy. The alarm was raised immediately. The prison, once a bastion of order, erupted into a frenzy of activity. An intensive search began, both within the prison walls and across the vast, unforgiving expanse of the San Francisco Bay. The impossible had happened: the rock had been breached. The FBI swiftly launched a massive investigation, deploying agents, Coast Guard vessels, and military aircraft in a desperate search for the missing men. The initial assumption was that the men had drowned in the bay's frigid waters and powerful currents, a common fate for those who attempted to escape Alcatraz by water. However, no bodies were immediately recovered, fueling both official uncertainty and public speculation. The search extended for days, then weeks, covering hundreds of square miles of ocean and shoreline. Days after the escape, fragments of evidence began to surface. On June 14, a paddle was found floating a few hundred yards from Angel Island. The following day, a plastic-wrapped wallet containing Anglin family photos and names was discovered on a beach near the island. Most significantly, on June 21, the remains of the homemade raft were found near the shore of Angel Island, along with a deflated life vest. This indicated that the men had indeed made it across a significant portion of the bay. Despite the recovered artifacts, the U.S. Marshals Service and the FBI officially concluded that Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers had drowned in the bay. The swift, cold currents and the immense physical exertion required for the crossing, combined with the lack of any further credible sightings or evidence of their survival, led them to this conclusion. The strong tidal currents would have pulled their bodies out to sea, explaining the absence of remains. Alcatraz's reputation for inescapable containment was thus preserved, at least on paper. But for many, the official ruling was unsatisfactory. The absence of bodies, combined with the discovery of their raft and belongings near Angel Island, fueled a pervasive belief that they might have survived. The daring nature of their plan, and the meticulous preparation involved, suggested a level of cunning that might well have extended to faking their demise. The Alcatraz escape became more than just a prison break; it transformed into an enduring American mystery, captivating the public imagination for decades. One of the most intriguing pieces of evidence suggesting survival emerged decades later. In 2013, the FBI received a letter purportedly written by John Anglin in 1978. The letter claimed that all three men survived the escape, though Frank Morris had died in 1979. It stated that John Anglin himself was suffering from cancer and offered to reveal his location in exchange for medical attention. The FBI took the letter seriously, analyzing it for fingerprints and DNA, but the results were inconclusive. Beyond the Brazil letter, various unconfirmed sightings and rumors have persisted over the years. Relatives of the Anglin brothers claim to have received postcards from them in the years following the escape and even a photograph in 1975. Purportedly showing them in Brazil. These accounts, while compelling to family members, have never been definitively verified by law enforcement. The lack of concrete, verifiable proof has allowed the ambiguity surrounding their fate to fester and grow, feeding the legend. Modern title analysis has offered fascinating insights into the escape. A 2014 study by Dutch scientists at Delft University of Technology, collaborating with the U.S. National Park Service, simulated the bay's currents on the night of the escape. Their findings suggested that if the men had departed between 11 p.m. and midnight, they could have reached Horseshoe Bay, north of the Golden Gate Bridge, and safely landed on land. However, if they left even slightly later, the currents would have swept them directly out to the Pacific Ocean. This tidal analysis, long after the fact, underscores the incredible foresight Frank Morris must have possessed. His meticulous planning likely included a deep understanding of the bay's complex currents, or at least a calculated risk based on available information. It suggests he chose the precise window of opportunity, not just for concealment, but for the optimal tidal conditions that might carry them to safety. His rumored high IQ wasn't just for digging, but for strategic environmental assessment. Alan West, the fourth conspirator, remained in Alcatraz and provided a detailed account of the escape plan to investigators. His testimony was crucial in confirming the methods and intentions of Morris and the Anglin brothers. While he consistently stated that he believed the others made it, his account also highlighted the immense difficulties and unforeseen challenges that could arise, such as his own struggle to get through his cell wall. His story grounds the escape in the gritty reality of prison life and desperate improvisation. Less than a year after the infamous escape, on March 21, 1963, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary closed its doors permanently. The official reasons cited were the high operating costs, exacerbated by the saltwater corrosion and logistical challenges of supplying an island prison. The escape, however, undeniably played a role in the decision, highlighting vulnerabilities and contributing to the narrative that even the inescapable could be challenged. The island transformed from a symbol of ultimate confinement to a haunting historical monument. Despite the official drowning conclusion, the U.S. Marshals Service continues to list Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin as active fugitives. Their wanted posters remain in circulation. Until definitive proof of death is obtained, the case remains open, making it one of the longest-running fugitive investigations in U.S. history. This persistent pursuit underscores the deep institutional discomfort with the idea that someone truly escaped the supposedly inescapable Alcatraz and got away. The Alcatraz escape has cemented its place in popular culture, inspiring books, documentaries, and the iconic 1979 film Escape from Alcatraz, starring Clint Eastwood as Frank Morris. This pervasive presence in media keeps the mystery alive, prompting new generations to ponder the fate of the three men. The story taps into a primal human fascination with daring defiance and the quest for freedom, making it far more than just a footnote in penal history. It's a tale of impossible ambition. The legal ramifications of the escape are also intriguing. If the men did survive, they would technically still be federal fugitives, albeit very elderly ones. The question of whether justice was truly served, or if they managed to circumvent it entirely, remains central to the narrative. For law enforcement, the lack of resolution represents an open wound, a challenge to the integrity of the system. For the public, it's a romantic notion of triumph over an oppressive institution. So, what is the final verdict? Did Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers drown in the frigid waters of San Francisco Bay, their audacious plan ending in tragedy? Or did they, against all odds, conquer the insurmountable, slipping away into anonymity, forever free from the grip of the rock? The truth, it seems, remains as elusive as the currents that carried their makeshift raft into the night. It is a story with no definitive ending, a persistent whisper in the annals of criminal history. The Alcatraz escape stands as a testament to the indomitable human will to defy confinement, even in the face of impossible odds. It symbolizes not just a prison break, but a profound challenge to authority, a reminder that even the most secure systems can be outsmarted. Whether the men survived or perished, their escape from Alcatraz fundamentally altered its narrative, forever imprinting itself as the site of one of the most brilliant, daring, and mysterious acts of defiance in penal history.